So I'm interested that with your three films that they're being played together and kind of they've got a title for all three, and you've also mentioned that you're interested in maybe moving away from those themes. So I'm wondering how to you those three films sit side by side, like on a program.
Actually, I'm really glad that the films can be shown together, and that the people who show my film, who like my film, are solidary with the idea that these three films belong together, because I really make them with the same energy, but not only with really the same kind of emotion or inspiration. Even if, of course, and the films are not the same, and you can maybe even oppose them sometimes, but I think what they are about basically and where they come from is the same. To me, there are different versions on a quest for meaning in a way. There are films about destiny, there are films about passing of time, and these three films were made in a way for me to both to turn a page and try to keep trace of both of moments of my life, but also of people that had meant a lot to me.
And there are films that there could be flashbacks used, but there isn't. There's kind of like you said, it's like turning a page. There's like a linear. It's like a path maybe, or.
Yes, it's quite impossible for me to imagine writing a film. Maybe I will change my mind, but now, where I would use flashbacks, because I guess my films are so much about passing of time that the notion of what is present, what is future, what is past is very accurate. So there is something almost sacred in it for me. So I can't just play with it in a way I would say we can. I put a scene in the beginning of the film, that is now, and then I go back to the past, and then again to the future. It would be so much contrary to the kind of feelings I'm trying to transmit, because I'm trying to give a sense for the public of the fact that you can't stop the time. So there is an artifice in the. I mean, of course, cinema uses artifice, and why not? But this one specifically, is just so much the contrary of the kind of feeling of truth I'm trying to transmit.
So on the other hand, though, there are gaps in the time, and I find it interesting because in Goodbye First Love, there's a conversation about gaps in the car, where she believes that nothing happened. She calls it a void, but the architect he thinks that. Thank you.
Sure.
Everything matters, but the film has clearly left those moments out.
It's funny because that you mentioned this scene, because it's actually the scene that felt when I wrote it as being in a way for what it was said in the film, really the crucial scene, not only of this film but maybe of the three of them. It was for me as if at this precise moment I was really telling what I had been trying to approach with my films. This paradox that you have, that I think you have in my films, of that the fact that you have a notion of despair and a notion of feeling of being totally impuissant, powerless, and not free in a way, and this other notion of accepting your destiny as being the only way to actually being free. So there is this trying of I think the characters in my film try to both to become free persons, which is not something that is given to you, something you have to learn, and they're trying to accept their destiny, and it could sound like being two contradictory things, and I think my three films are trying to make them belong together, or to show that they belong together.
Yeah, it's like in some movies it's more with the parents, and in the most recent one it's more maybe with the relationship, but there's kind of a power to that connection and also a weakness, and I think that's kind of what you're saying about having the freedom to move on, that you sacrifice something but also gain something.
Yes, and it's also about accepting the fact that moving on doesn't mean to just destroy what you have been, like the memory of what you have been before, just like deny the past, and the fact that you have to accept it as being part of you, even if you don't like or even like hate in a way what you've been. And you have that even in All Is Forgiven with the main character, when they meet together again, him and his girl. It's possible only because they're in a way they are in peace with the past, and they don't really try to go back to there and try to say who was wrong and who was right, and the guilt, and that they're just moving forward, but just knowing that they know that it has happened, but you can't change it. It's just like that.
And something that you can't change is the death that happens at the end of that film, and I'm curious why maybe that event would occur at the conclusion. And you have a major death in Father of My Children in the middle of the film.
You mean why in the first one it occurs at the end, or
Yeah,
what it
yeah.
occurs, or just why it occurs?
Yeah, well, no, why at the end? Because it seems like an interesting decision to place that.
Well, to me it was not like a decision. Like, it's not like I wrote the script and progressively I arrived to the end of the script, and then I'm thinking like, how should it end? It's more like it was the purpose of the film. It's because he died, like because I knew this character would die, I had to make the film. And my three films came, actually I think my three films come from this kind of necessity. The three of them have to do with grief, actually. And maybe that's also why I feel they belong together, even though maybe I will always write on things that are connected with death or grief and things like that. But in this case, it was very obvious that there would have been no film, I guess, if there was not this man who was close to me who had died. So it's not like I could change this. It would have been such a betrayal, like to make him live at the end. And I think the whole film was there to try to understand, or if there is a meaning in such a life, if it's not absurd, if it's because you could think it's just absurd at the end. Why so much suffering and meeting again and then dying, where you could just start a new life. And I don't think the film gives the answer. I think none of my film gives the answer to such difficult questions. But I think, well, to me, the existence of the film, the reality of the film, is the only answer. It's just to me a relief that the film gives a reality not to these people, because they are not. It's not them. It's just characters played by actors, but it gives a reality to my desire to keep memory of them, and it gives a frame to feelings and to memories that would otherwise disappear, and that helps me and gives me a feeling. Maybe it's an illusion, but I don't feel it as being an illusion. It helps me to have the feeling that that these people, these people survive through to the expression of our sorry, the fact that we make portraits of people, to me makes them be still alive in a way. Also in my second film, Father of My Children, it was all about this question of surviving your death. Is it nonsense, or is there a way? Does soul mean something? Does it survive physical death? And the question in Father of My Children was whether it's more like the films who makes the soul like live on, of Grégoire Scanvel's soul live on, or if it's more his children and the love that his wife and children have for him, or if it's both.
Well, she mentioned, the eldest daughter mentions that her soul is French in that film, despite being half Italian. And I'm wondering the importance of place. Like, that's a film that maybe not in the story is place so key, but clearly in the film it opens and
Sorry?
in Father of My Children,
Yes.
it opens and ends with those shots of Paris, and there's that line about the soul being French. So what is the importance of place in the films?
Well, they are extremely important, and I think even more than that, I think that's the, how do you say, sorry, dramaturgy?
I got
Dramaturgy comes in my films from a lot from the atmosphere and from what places inspire me. I mean, what I mean is when I write, when I start writing a script, I start with a desire to make a portrait of somebody, I start with an emotion, a certain idea of somebody, but then the one thing that helps me constructing the film and the dramaturgy of the film is the places, actually. It's not like I think some people would, for instance, would write this way, saying like, oh, this should happen so that you understand this and that, and then this and that, and then this should happen, and then it would make that this happen. But for me it's more like, oh, I need to have a scene here, because it's impossible to explain it, because it's something just, it's invisible, but because there is something in this place, in the atmosphere, in the, to me, like, places have a soul or something. So I want this to be here, and then it's gonna be here, and then here, and I don't even know what's gonna be in the scenes. I just want them to be here, and it gives me a frame, and inside that I feel totally free, and I feel also confident that once they are put together, it will make a story. So I feel confident that I don't need to tell a story, that the story is being told from itself by the following of the different moments in different locations.
And there are usually two. Like, there's usually like one that plays off of the other. So like in All Is Forgiven, you have Vienna and you have Paris, and there's kind of the urban, rural in the following two films, like the difference between the city or with the family home outside.
And Paris is very much present in the three films, but never as a place where you stay during all the film, but always, it's always portrayed also through the contrast between Paris and another city or country, or I think that's also one of the things that makes the film belong together. I think there are three films about Paris too. I knew very precisely in each film, like in which district this film is gonna happen. That, I don't know, like for instance, when in my first film the main character meets with her daughter again, I knew in which park, in which area of Paris this is gonna happen, and to me this was meaningful. It could not have been in any other park, because there is a certain specific atmosphere in this area. It doesn't tell the same kind of things than in some other places. So, and it was even more accurate in Father of My Children, I think, because I couldn't dissociate the producer, his company, to a certain area of Paris, and I tried, to me, portraying him and his world was also finding the right way to film this area of Paris.
And is that a kind of autobiographical element, like the associations that you have with maybe where something's going to be?
It's not necessary. I mean, places are not necessary places that belong to my own history. I guess they are. In some cases they are, but sometimes I have to know them just a little bit to just have the notion that I want to film them. But like, for instance, in Father of My Children, we filmed in this area, like the Faubourg Saint-Denis. It's near like les Grands Boulevards, between République and les Grands Boulevards, and it's a very busy place. You have it's very a lot of noise, a lot of cars, all kinds of people, and it's really like it's a very you could say it's the very heart of Paris in a way. But it's not an area that I know or that I have a history with. But it was very much connected to the character I wanted to portray. It's only in the last film, in the third film that I've made, that I actually filmed places like that were kind of intimate. Because this film was more intimate than the two other ones, but it's not in the second and first one. There were places that I knew, but not necessarily like places where these scenes had happened in real life or things like that.
So in Goodbye First Love, the kind of, what is it? Is it Ardèche? Is that the place, the house? Is that the one that you're mentioning that it has an association, or?
Yes, it's a place where my grandmother has a house, and forever. I mean, I've been spending all my holidays there since I was a child, so I know this. And I didn't film in my house, but I filmed all the locations except the house are really the ones, like they are not like looking like the ones I know. They are the ones I know. They are the places where I go swimming, etc. And actually, I was not sure first that I would film in these precise places, and I tried to find others because first I thought maybe it's more interesting to, as I did for the other films, to change a little bit the places. And for this film, it was just impossible. Even though it's not a matter of like beauty, or because there were some places that were like even more beautiful or spectacular than the ones that I've decided to shoot, but I just had such a long history with them that I think I had an idea on how to film them, and there was a relationship to these places that was so strong that I felt it would have been more superficial in a way if I had to film another river, another lake. It had to be these ones.
And the house is so important. Like, I mean, Camille says that it's like her dream house, and that.
Oh, the other one, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, like, you know, the house where they are staying, like that is supposed to be her house. This one is not a house I knew before the shooting, but the one house where they go, where they pick cherries, and where she says it's a dream house. And to me, it's like it's the very heart of the film in terms of aesthetic, because it's the house that units both her love for Sullivan, and her vocation actually. But this house is really the house that is near my actual house, well, my grandmother's house, and it's really my dream house. It's a place I've been spending so much time. I've been spending so much time there. It's a place that has to me some magic that no other has. So I didn't feel like I I tried in the beginning, but I didn't feel like I could find this kind of poetry this place has anywhere else. Because it's a house belonging to, actually it's a very old, simple, traditional house, like with no ornaments or anything. But she belongs to quite famous German artist, and in the details I can feel how much their relationship with art is present in the house. So to me this house is both like nature and culture, and I think the film is also about that. So that's why I think this kind of places you cannot really replace. I mean, it's unique.
That section kind of has an almost dreamlike quality too. Like you said, magic, and then she calls it a dream house. But it also happened, like the switch from the urban to that is so quick that it's almost like a dream itself, and it kind of stands apart from the rest of the film formally.
I think it has to do with my own relationship to country, because I've lived in Paris always, like since I was born. I always lived in Paris, like in a small, a little bit dark flat, not very nice one, although I loved it. But then in the summer, I would go in this place that is like the one place in France where you have the few people. It's like totally empty. It's really like country. You have no tourists because the weather is not so good, and it's the oldest mountain, so it's like empty. You have so much space. It's wild, and when I think of my childhood, there is always this contrast between like the somehow like I wouldn't say hard life, but like more gray quality of life of Paris, and then the illumination of the summer. And when people ask me what were the films that you have seen as a child or adolescent that have impressed you or make you a filmmaker, or what are the books, like where your vocation comes from, I always say that I feel it doesn't come from, I feel like my imagination wasn't built by films I've seen or books I've read, but much more by the time I've spent there dreaming and doing nothing, actually.
Is the editing kind of intuitive like that, as you're describing? Because especially in All Is Forgiven, but also I'd say the start of Goodbye First Love, it seems like scenes end maybe quicker than they would by other filmmakers. Like there's like a rhythm, a tempo that's faster.
Thanks for saying that. I hope it's true. Because I'm kind of obsessed with rhythm. I guess most of filmmakers are in a way or another, even if they prefer like slowness or speed. But it's like especially in the editing, because it's addicting. So but even in the script, and like I can read it so many times again, like over and over and over, just to check if especially like the transitions, if they are enough like rhythm.
Yeah.
And my editor she edited all of my films. She's a close friend, and I think she has the same kind of, she's a maniac too about this, and especially again the transitions. And the one thing we really care about when we edit is that to try to make the scene not have a beginning and an ending, you know, like that's what gives me at least a feeling of reality. Is every time when we make the first draft of the editing and we watch it, we would say things like, oh, I think the scene we should start a little bit later or finish a little bit earlier, because I can feel it's like the beginning of the scene, and that makes me feel like I am on the set, you know. So that's why I'm always trying to make you feel like the film has begun before you were able to watch it, and you're taking how do you say in French? We have this expression, on prend le train en marche.
Catch the train as it's
the train has already been going and you catch it. That's really like the principle I have, the very simple one for editing.
In All's Forgiven, it seems like there's going to be intervals that are taken out of the life.
There's going to be, sorry?
Kind of an interval, like
interval?
every
Oh, sorry.
like every so often, so it doesn't seem like this scene is necessarily important in a cinematic sense, but like it's just a series of moments.
I think it's as I was telling you, it has to do with the way I'm writing, not trying to make a story look like a story where you have all the moments you need to have. But I always wrote with this faith that it was more interesting to just tell the moments you want to tell and then trust the viewer to construct the story through these moments. And so it means that sometimes you can have scenes that are really necessary, scenes where things are said as you expect them to be said. And sometimes you can also have scenes that could be totally taken away from a professional point of view, but ultimately that's these scenes I think will give the most essential things, because also that's the moment where you express your freedom, saying, well, yes, I choose to make two very long scenes on apparently non-important moment in their relationship, and I choose to make to go very quickly on moments that could be a lot more expanded because they are so melodramatic, for instance. And I think I try to feel totally free in terms of this supposed preconceived des passages obligés.
Obligated moments, necessary moments.
Thinking that it will give the identity to my films, so that they will have that in this way they will have their own identities. I was never in any film school. I was never taught how to write a script, so I never had also to get rid of all the rules to find my own way of writing. I had to find my own way anyway because I didn't know how a script was supposed to be written. And I think if I was asked today, I still would not know.
It's interesting that the structures tend to be things people talk about, but I never get the impression that you put as much weight or emphasis on those structures than how people kind of receive the film or watch it as an audience.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Well, a lot of people comment on, say, all of the films having maybe two parts to them, but it doesn't seem like in the film that's emphasized by your filmmaking as much.
No, it's true, and actually I'm asked often why it's like that, and I feel like sometimes people think it's something quite theoretical, like as if I wanted to propose a new concept, formal concept, and actually it's not like that. To me it's more that the form I'm choosing, the way of telling the story and the structure and anything doesn't come from an intention to impress by inventing a new form, but it comes from a very strict imitation of life. But what is life to me? So I guess it's not the same for everybody. But I'm just trying to depict the story as it happens for me. For instance, when I did Father of My Children, and everybody would tell me, why? Oh, the thing that I loved about the film was that you had him die in the middle. It's interesting because the film is divided in two parts. And can you explain us why did you do that? And I didn't do that because I thought it was interesting or because I wanted to surprise, but it was just because the idea of the film, the desire of the film comes from there, meaning from the observation of a situation as being like that. Like, I mean, I've known a producer during 1 year, and we had. It was a strong relationship, but it was more than that. It was for me the discovery of a new world and of a certain energy and of a person who had an extreme, a certain rayonnement.
Glowing?
Yes, and then he died, and then during a couple of months, even though I would go there only like a couple of times, but then I became like the witness of something else, another world, and there was this woman, there was his woman who was taking care of the company, trying to finish the things, and there were all these people who were like lost, and there were all these questions and his absence and everything. And so, you know, the fact that the film is divided into two is just came naturally for me from my experience of the two moments who are opposed and connected. And so to me, making this film is for me trying to see if this is a whole, if there is a coherence in that, if it tells something, or if it's just chaotic.
You've got you've got inner titles in All Is Forgiven. What was the decision behind kind of visually marking these shifts?
I think it's maybe in a very like naive or childish way. It's my attempt to put order. You know, I'm just reading a book about. And it was funny to read exactly that. Like, it's a writer called Klaus Mann, and he says, at some point he says, writing is nothing else but trying to put order in life. I don't know if it's the right translation, but like to order life. And it's so true to me. Like when I write, it's nothing else than that. Like trying to, I don't know, in almost like put things in, like you know, like you ranger sa chambre, arrange your room.
Yeah.
It's the same basically, but except it's not a room. It's like it's your life, and I'm just trying to do that. And it was so. It was more. I guess it was more raw, more simple. The language or the translation of that into language of. Into films in my first film. So it was like that's why I really wanted to have this. Like undertitle saying, so it's 9 years ago, and then that happened, and then after, I guess for the second and even more for the third, the more it goes, the less I feel I have to show I'm doing that, because I know I'm doing that anyway, but I don't need to show the coutures.
The seams.
It's one of like the few kind of really obviously formal devices in the films that draw attention to themselves, and another one is kind of the iris in and the iris out in Goodbye First Love, and I was wondering what made you choose that?
I think because from time to time it's interesting to I think it's something like, again, that has to do with like childish attitude of mine. Like, I thought it was just, I don't know, there is some kind of innocence about that to me that I try not to lose somehow. Like, doing that, I could think like, is it really like a good taste to do that? And then I thought, I don't care, I just like it, you know? And I think from time to time, just to feel free about your own principles and not to be like too ideological about the form or too rigid. That's the kind of rule I try to follow, actually. I try to be not ideological about the filming, and if at some point I want to do something, even if it's even surprised me that I want to do so, I just think, let's do it, you know? Even like The Water, the song you have at the end, the first time when I was thinking of using this song, I was totally sure I would not use it because it was so obvious. You know, I was listening to the song by accident, actually. Like, when I was editing, I happened to listen to the second album of Johnny Flynn, and there was this song, and I loved it, and and I realized the lyrics were so close to my own film. It was as if he was trying to say the same thing than I was. So I thought, oh, I have to use it. And then I thought, no, I can't use it. It's too obvious. It's like literal. And then I thought, so why not? It's just, and the more it goes, the more I trust like obviousness.
The music's really interesting as well because it gets talked about a lot, but one thing that stands out to me is that it's very kind of international and it marks kind of different cultures, and that's something that also is a subject that plays into, for instance, the international business of film in Father of My Children, or for instance, Sullivan traveling, and I'm wondering how those two kind of pair together, because one thing stands out. When Sullivan's wearing kind of the Studio One t-shirt after he's had his travels, it's like it's deliberately showing that connection between maybe the global village.
I'm not sure I would say the global village, but for sure I would say I feel like I don't like so much this expression like citizen of the world or something, but at least I would say I feel I'm deeply European, much more than French. And I'm always astonished when people tell me like that my films are so French. Oh, actually yes, I feel my films are very French, and I'm kind of proud of it because I love French New Wave, for instance, and I feel as I would love to be an inheritor of that. So it's not a problem to me. But then, as a person in my identity, I feel much more European. Having my mother is French, but my father was born in Vienna. His father was Danish, and I feel much more like I belong to this history, like the history of, for instance, of Austrian people before the war, when it was still as when it was even the symbol of European cosmopolitanism. I feel much closer to that than to like only French like identity, and I think my choices of music and the kind of désinvolture, freedom, or I don't know exactly the word, but I have choosing like the fact that I don't try to choose music that is French because we are in France, and that would be like obviously connect to the culture of the characters. Like I choose sometimes like Irish, Scottish songs, American ones. That could be French, but it just, or Violetta Parra or things like that. It's just because I don't feel I'm belonging to French culture actually.
I really like the use of the raincoats and All Is Forgiven, because at first it's kind of like post-punk, but then everyone just gets so excited when they're covering the Kinks, right? Like it's like you get those levels, right, of maybe not being so tied down to one specific spot.
Yes.
I'm also interested in that film with the what did I write down here? The kind of the juxtapositions. We were talking about editing.
Sorry,
the juxtapositions. Like sometimes the montage has two things, because it's like ending before it should end, and it's beginning later than it should. So they kind of like, there's more power from one scene to the next. Like I'm thinking of where they're fighting in the kitchen, and then there's the breakfast scene, and it just seems to like come in a way that's not natural, but that makes it more natural in a way, because it's maybe how you remember, how memory works, where
I don't know, I think I just try to put moments one after the other and not trying to underline the connections. And I'm also always interested in, as you said, hard for me to say in English, but in the contact between like different materials, like a landscape and a city, a scene where people talk a lot, and then the silent scene. I think mostly it's the contrast between very different types of scene, once they are roughly put against one another, that interests me. I think it gives things that you not always see in films, where mostly the material where because I mean many films the material is more homogenic, and I'm interested in this constant like contrast from one scene to another, and that's why also I think in my film you have, it's not like you can say, because sometimes I'm said, oh, people talk a lot in your films, but it's not really true. Actually, it's half and half. I would say you have scenes where, for a long time, people talk and say a lot of things, and then you can have 10 minutes of almost not talking. And I think it's this kind of dialectic construction that I'm interested in.
And the scenes where when people aren't talking, often the camera's kind of following someone. But what I find interesting about that is that it's not usually as tight as most films. It tends to be like a longer shot showing someone maneuvering or walking.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
So many of the scenes when people aren't talking, the camera tends to...
When they are not talking?
Yeah. It tends to like follow a character kind of walking, kind of the way the films follow the path or the river, as you mentioned. But it tends to be like a longer shot, like it's more of a distance between the person and the camera than usual.
I think it would be interesting, I mean you can do that for many films, but if you notice something about the filmmaker style and then you put together all the things that are the same, it would be surely strange if you would take, for instance in my film, all the shots of just people walking. I think it would make a whole film. Like I guess you can have like 1 hour and 40 minutes like just about like young girls or men walking. And but I do believe that you can get a lot of what people are and of their presence by filming them walking. And I was actually surprised to hear like a friend telling me, somebody who writes on films, he's just reading a book about people walking in films, and I'm interested to read it because I think it's an aspect of the films. Well, it's something that is very much, and I guess will always be very much present in my films. I can't imagine like filming people only like that and not seeing their whole body, and I need to see them when they walk in the street. I need to see, you know, the whole body. I think in the way like how slow or how fast they walk and where they put their hands and how they balance or something, you get things that you will never get of them when they are talking. But at the same time, when people talk, it's not only for me about what they are saying. I mean, people think you film them talking because you want to make the audience know about certain things, what they are saying. But to me, it's as much that as just see what their faces express. I find it just beautiful to see people talking, and it tells me things about them, not just because what they are actually saying, but just their expressions, and that's what moves me.
Oh, there's something Bressonian about like the way Bresson emphasizes gestures or
well, I think it has. I mean, I never try to imitate anything of his style because it would be ridiculous. But I think, at least I think the desire to film that has a lot to do with him, or I would to say it in a different way. I guess that's what moves me so much about his films, because he found his own way, unique way to get like spirit of people through filming their moving or their gestures, or I don't know how to express it. But
are these gestures things that maybe you notice when you're casting? Like, is it?
Yes, I think it's the one thing. I think it's the one thing I look at. I can't. It's hard to. Like when I make a scene with an actor, when I'm casting, it's not really about seeing how good he is, or as an actor, or if he can do this or that. It's more about feeling what is the aura of this person. And for instance, Constance Rousseau in my first film, who we met her on the street, and she was very shy. She was not an actress. She was like 15 years old or 16 years old. She was in high school, and she was hidden by her hair at that time. Like she had hairs everywhere, and but she had this incredible aura. It was almost like surrealistic in a way. I mean, there was something more about her, and that's what I'm trying to find with the actors.
There's something about her eyes and like the way they kind of scan, like they're always kind of moving.
Yes, she has a. It's not a sickness. It's just a. Some people have that. It's just like she can't. Her eyes can't really stop moving in certain situations. Not always, but like they. It's it comes from her father. Her father has that too. But I wasn't aware of that when I was moved by her the first time, and I'm sure it has to do with that. But I think it's the thing that makes her beauty even more strong. With that is that it's like she's like a little animal, like you know this kind of trembling, ce tremblement, trembling it gives to her face, very subtle one. The fact that it gives her beauty an extreme fragility.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made to me her presence so moving. I think it had to do with this. It was a fragile beauty, and in a way that was really unique, I thought.
Are you still planning on making the French house?
Sorry, but like the sun is like. Can I wear like? I think I have sunglasses. I don't really like to wear them in interviews, but I think otherwise I would be like.
I'm gonna put mine on a wall mat.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the cut that goes between us not wearing sunglasses.
What? I'm sorry, but.
No, it'll be fun. We tend to show the seams as well.
What?
We show our seams as well.
That's it. What are you saying?
Our seams? What was the word?
Le couture?
Yeah, that's how our interviews go. Are you still working on the French house? Is it Eden? Is that what the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm still working on it, and it's gonna be a long, big adventure, I think. I just hope we're gonna shoot next year. It's good, and I think the English title will be Lost in Music.
Yeah. And that's a reference to the Sister Sledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mixed by David Mancuso in
Yeah.
a French party.
Yeah. And that has an association with Larry Levan, right? Like, wasn't he someone that used that a lot? Like in
Who?
Paradise Garage? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the film is about garage. I mean, the film is about a French DJ who, like, with his friend, creates a garage duo in Paris, and they are like the one and actually only ones who like transmit, like, who make garage be known in Paris, because they just belong to this house culture music, but they are the one who chose garage and made it for a couple of years famous in Paris. And the film is about this, the success of electronic music and of this group of very, very young people in the nightlife in Paris in the years like 90s until today.
So it's like leading up to kind of Daft Punk becoming.
The Daft Punk are there from the beginning.
Yeah,
actually.
oh really?
They are like they are 18 years old when the film starts, and we kind of lose them after, but we're gonna see them because it was a group of young people who did things together when they were 18, and Daft Punk were part of it, and my brother was too, and I've written the film with him, and it was very funny film to write. I mean, it was very exciting to write this film because we had the feeling, the same kind of feeling I had with Father of My Children, that it's a extremely like rich territory that has never been explored yet, and it's very exciting to tell, but then it's very complicated to finance too because of the rights of the music and because it's a 2-part film. So it's like a 3 hours and a half film. So it's not the kind of money I need to make this film is not the kind of money you get for the films I do usually. So we have to kind of invent a new way of producing with this film. So it takes more time, and I just don't know if we're gonna make it.
Is that like impacting maybe the music selections that you're gonna have, like the clearance costs and?
Hopefully not. I think it would more the money we get to make this film will probably more impact the length of the film. I guess if we don't have enough money, I will have to cut the script. But the film is happening during 20 years, so I don't want it to become like a best of. It's the opposite. What I'm trying to do, the opposite to a like best of, like the
Box set.
our best memories. You know, it's not really about that. But then if I have to cut, it's going to be more difficult to tell the story as I want to tell it.
Well, it sounds like an interesting structure compared to your other films, because time's so important in all of them, and it's like marked out specifically in at least 2 of them, but this is the only one where there's a marker that is more historical, that someone will understand why it's that period. Like, for instance, All Is Forgiven specifically starts in 1999, but there are no events in it that like someone would recognize as being 1999.
Yes, it's true. In this case, the big difference will be that all events are connected. I mean, are openly, like you could say, historical events, like the nightclubs have existed, and I don't know, for instance, you have like the first songs of the Daft Punk, like happen to a precise moment, and the film will constantly, often be referred to these real moments that other people know. That is not only like an intimate story.
And what point does it end at? Like, what musically, like where is the
Death of garage music in Paris. Well, no, it ends today, 2011.
Okay.
Well, it's not today anymore because it was 2 years. It was when I wrote the film 1 year ago, but it ends in 2000. It starts in 1992 and ends in 2011. The last club that you see in the film is the one called Silencio, who was designed by David Lynch. That's the last one.
That's his Mulholland Drive themed bar?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, thanks so much, Mia.
Thank you.